He was just a struggling single dad trying to make it through another exhausting day. Tom worked double shifts, lived paycheck to paycheck, and barely had enough to keep the lights on for his 8-year-old daughter, Lily. But everything changed one rainy night in a dark alley when he heard a woman's desperate screams. Without thinking twice, he jumped in, unarmed, outnumbered, and completely unprepared. What he didn't know was that this act of bravery would turn his life upside down. The woman he rescued, a powerful tech billionaire, Veronica Thorne, kidnapped by rivals and presumed missing. Hours after the rescue, she returned, not with police or a thank you card, but in a gleaming Rolls Royce with an offer that left Tom speechless. What she proposed wasn't just life-changing, it was unimaginable. This isn't a fairy tale, it's a story of courage, fate, and the kind of twist you only see in the movies. From a run-down apartment to a luxury penthouse dinner, from scraping by to changing lives, Tom's journey will challenge what you believe about everyday heroes. You won't believe what happens next. And the most shocking part? It wasn't a rescue. It was the deal that came after. Tom Carter's alarm buzzed before dawn, but he was already awake, staring at the ceiling of his tiny one-bedroom apartment. The cracked plaster overhead mirrored the stress lines etched into his face. It had been another sleepless night like so many before. The air was cold. The old radiator hissed, but failed to warm the room. Winter had arrived early, and so had the overdue bills. He shifted silently to not wake Lily, his 8-year-old daughter, asleep on the sofa in the next room. She clutched a worn-out stuffed elephant, its seams barely holding together, much like their lives. Tom shuffled into the kitchen where the refrigerator buzzed louder than it should. Inside were half a loaf of bread, 3 eggs, and a container of milk that he sniffed before pouring. "Just enough for breakfast," he mumbled. Tom had worked 2 jobs since Lily's mother left 3 years ago. She said she wasn't built for poverty and disappeared without looking back. Since then, Tom had filled every role: father, mother, provider, protector. But the weight was getting heavier. He worked maintenance during the day and cleaned offices at night, earning barely enough to cover food and rent. That morning, Lily woke up with her usual smile, hair tangled and eyes bright. "Morning, Daddy," she said, hopping off the couch and hugging him. "Morning, Peanut," he said, with a smile that masked exhaustion. "Breakfast is ready. Special today, scrambled eggs, toast, and milk." "Wow, fancy," she giggled, climbing onto the stool at their small, wobbly table. Watching her eat made Tom feel like a king, at least for a few minutes. But the stack of envelopes on the counter snapped him back to reality. Past due notices. Final warnings. Rent was late again, and their landlord wasn't exactly a generous soul. Another week like this, and they could be out on the street. After dropping Lily at school, Tom headed to his first job. He repaired broken pipes in a high-rise office building downtown, people in suits rushing past him as if he were invisible. He never minded hard work, but the lack of progress was suffocating. He'd applied for better jobs, night classes, anything that could lead to a different future, but the doors kept closing. By evening, he changed into his janitor uniform in the bathroom of a gas station. The second job paid less, but every dollar counted. He cleaned the floors of an insurance firm after hours, scrubbing away the day's footprints while his body screamed for rest. He got home past midnight. Lily was already asleep, her tiny frame bundled under mismatched blankets. Tom sat on the edge of the couch, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "I'm sorry, baby girl," he whispered. "I'm trying." He didn't turn on the lights. They were rationing electricity. Instead, he sat in the dark, listening to the silence of the night, the occasional drip from a leaking faucet, and the haunting thump of his own heartbeat. That night, as he closed his eyes, Tom didn't pray for riches or miracles. He prayed for strength, just one more day of holding it all together, but fate had different plans. The next day, he was told his night shift was being cut. Budget constraints, effective immediately. Tom stood frozen in the manager's office, nodding silently as he was handed a final paycheck, half of what he needed to cover the rent. He didn't go straight home. He wandered the city streets, thinking. The city lights blurred into streaks through misty rain. His shoes soaked through, his coat too thin. He thought about asking for help, but who would he ask? His pride, one of the few things he had left, kept him from begging. He cut through an alley near the industrial district, a shortcut he rarely used. It was darker than usual, and the storm clouds above began to open. Just as he reached the center of the alley, he heard something that made him stop in his tracks. A scream. It wasn't loud but sharp, urgent. It echoed off the brick walls and bounced through the narrow passage like a warning bell. He turned toward the sound, heart pounding, eyes searching. There in the shadows he saw movement. A woman, two figures, a struggle. Tom didn't know who they were. He didn't know what the hell was happening, but he knew one thing. Someone needed help. And despite everything, despite being broke, exhausted, and broken himself, he ran toward the danger. The scream sliced through the night like a blade. Tom froze for a moment, his instincts battling exhaustion. The alley was shrouded in shadows, lit only by a flickering street lamp far behind him. The buildings on either side loomed like watchful giants, their brick faces stained and silent. He edged forward, keeping his footsteps quiet. The rain had begun to fall harder now, soaking his clothes and plastering his hair to his forehead. But adrenaline dulled the discomfort. Around the corner, the muffled struggle became clearer. A woman's frantic cries, footsteps scuffling, the heavy grunt of male voices. "Get in the van," one of them barked. "I said let me go," the woman shouted, her voice cracking with fear. Tom peeked around a dumpster. A dark van with its side door open stood idling. Two men, masked and bulky, were trying to force a woman into it. She kicked, thrashed, and elbowed, but they were stronger. Tom's stomach twisted. He could turn around, call the police, and walk away. He had Lily to think about, but walking away would haunt him forever. And something in the way the woman fought, like she refused to be broken, lit a fire in him. He picked up a metal rod lying near the dumpster. Not much, but enough. "Hey!" he shouted, stepping into the open. The men paused. The woman turned, her eyes locking with his, wife, terrified, pleading. "This doesn't concern you, buddy," one of the men growled. "She said no," Tom said firmly, gripping the rod tighter. They looked at each other, momentarily confused. Maybe they hadn't expected interference in this forgotten part of the city, but their hesitation was brief. One of them lunged. Tom swung the rod and caught the man in the shoulder. The impact jolted up his arm, and the man staggered back with a shout. The other attacker cursed and came at him fast. Tom ducked, swung again, missed. A punch slammed into his side, knocking the air from his lungs. The rod clattered to the ground. The two men now focused entirely on him, the woman temporarily forgotten, but that was their mistake. The woman kicked one in the back of the knee, sending him crashing forward. Tom snatched up the rod again and struck the other in the ribs. The man yelped, doubled over. Rain fell in sheets now, mixing with sweat and the coppery scent of blood. Sirens wailed in the distance. "Forget it, let's go," one of them shouted. The attackers scrambled into the van and screeched away, tires spinning on wet asphalt. Tom dropped the rod, panting. The woman leaned against the alley wall, trembling. "Are you okay?" he asked, approaching cautiously. She nodded, eyes glistening. "I think so. You saved me." Before he could say more, she took out a phone from her coat, hidden somehow during the struggle. She dialed quickly, her voice low and urgent. "I'm safe. I'll send my location. Come alone." She ended the call and looked at Tom. "Thank you, truly." "You need the cops?" he asked, wiping blood from his chin. "No," she said firmly. "No police." He frowned. "They were kidnapping you." "I'll handle it," she said, stepping into the shadows. "Forget you saw me." And with that, she disappeared into the night. Tom stood there, drenched, heart pounding. The adrenaline hadn't yet worn off, but the woman was gone. The alley was silent again, as if nothing had happened. The only evidence was a dented pipe and a few splashes of blood on the pavement. He walked home in a daze. What had just happened? Who was that woman? Why didn't she want the police involved? The questions circled in his mind like vultures. By the time he reached his apartment, dawn was just breaking. The world had turned gray, and the city was beginning to stir. He opened the door quietly, trying not to wake Lily. She was still asleep, curled up under her blanket. Her peaceful face grounded him. Whatever had happened, he was still her dad, and she still needed breakfast. He cleaned himself up in the tiny bathroom, wincing as he examined the bruises on his ribs and face. He looked like he'd been mugged, but he felt oddly proud. He'd stepped up when someone needed him. He didn't tell anyone about the incident. Who would believe it anyway? That day, Tom went to his first job as usual. He winced with every movement, but he kept working. When his co-workers asked what happened, he said he fell on the subway stairs. No one pressed him. No one ever did. He kept expecting something to happen, a news report, a police visit, anything, but the story never came. No missing persons bulletin, no thank you from a mysterious billionaire, no trace of her. She had vanished, and life moved on. The next few days were harder than ever. With one job gone, money dried up fast. He applied to grocery stores, security firms, even fast food joints. Rejections rolled in. By Friday, his electricity was cut. That night, Lily and he shared a candlelit dinner of toast and peanut butter. She called it camping night and laughed. Tom smiled, but inside he was crumbling. And then came Saturday. It started like any other, gloomy, quiet, empty. Tom was washing laundry at a coin-op when his phone buzzed. An unknown number. He didn't answer. Who could it be? When he got home, his neighbors were standing outside, gawking. A gleaming black Rolls Royce Phantom was parked in front of their building, purring softly. Out stepped Veronica Thorne, the woman from the alley. Wearing a tailored trench coat and oversized sunglasses, she looked every bit the icon, but her eyes scanned the crowd until they found him. "Tom Carter," she said. His heart stopped. "Yeah. I owe you more than a thank you," she said, "but let's start there." Tom felt like the pavement beneath him had disappeared. Veronica Thorne, her name finally sinking in, stood just feet away, drawing attention like a magnet. People whispered and pointed. A few pulled out phones. She ignored them all. "Can we talk somewhere private?" she asked gently. Still stunned, Tom nodded and led her up the narrow stairs to his apartment. Inside, Lily peeked out from the kitchen, wide-eyed. "Daddy, who's that lady?" Veronica knelt down and smiled. "Hi, Lily. I'm a friend of your dad's. He's kind of a hero." Lily beamed. "I know." Over lukewarm tea at the wobbly table, Veronica explained everything. She was the CEO of Thorn Technologies, a private tech empire. The night of the attack, she'd been abducted by operatives from a rival firm. It was meant to be a warning, or worse. Tom had interrupted their plans. "I didn't expect help," she said. "No one knew where I was. If you hadn't come down that alley—" "I just did what anyone would do," Tom muttered. "No," she said. "Most people would have walked away. You didn't." She handed him an envelope. Inside, $10,000 in cash. Tom's eyes widened. "I can't take this." "You can and you will, but that's not all." She leaned forward. "I want to offer you something else, something bigger. Come with me tonight. Let me show you what gratitude looks like when you have the means to do more." Tom hesitated. Could he trust her? Was this real? But one glance at Lily's curious face told him everything. "Yes," he said quietly, "we'll come." And with that, the night that changed his life wasn't over. It had just begun. Word travels fast in neighborhoods like Tom's. By the time he and Lily stepped outside, the whole block was buzzing with gossip. Old Mrs. Delgado from 2 doors down was already peeking through her blinds, and a group of teens were filming the black Rolls Royce with their phones, hoping to catch a glimpse of a celebrity. Tom felt a mix of awe and unease as he approached the vehicle with Lily's small hand in his. It wasn't just the gleaming chrome or the silent purr of the engine, it was the contrast. The car didn't belong here. It was like a diamond dropped in a dustbin. A uniformed driver opened the rear door, and Veronica Thorne stepped out, radiant in a deep green coat and heeled boots. Her presence silenced the crowd. "Evening, Tom. Lily," she greeted with a warm smile. Lily blinked up at her wide-eyed. "Are you rich?" Veronica laughed gently. "You could say that." Tom felt like a man trapped between worlds. Just yesterday, he couldn't afford milk. Now he was being escorted into a car that probably cost more than his apartment building. The interior was even more surreal. Plush white leather, dark wood trim, soft lights glowing like candlelight. Lily giggled as the seats adjusted automatically. "Is this a spaceship?" she whispered. Veronica smiled. "Almost." They drove in silence for a while, Tom occasionally catching his reflection in the mirror, bruises fading, beard rough, eyes still skeptical. "Where are we going?" he asked. "To my home. I want to talk in a space where we're not being watched," she replied. The city lights shifted from flickering neon signs to high-rise towers and tree-lined streets. Eventually the car stopped in front of a luxury penthouse building that looked like it belonged on the cover of an architecture magazine. Tom hesitated as the doorman opened the car door. "You sure about this?" he asked. "I never do anything I'm not sure about," Veronica replied. Up they went, glass elevators, minimalist hallways, and finally into a sprawling top-floor apartment that overlooked the entire city. Marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows, art pieces Tom couldn't name but knew were expensive. Lily darted toward a white grand piano in the corner, then stopped. "Can I touch it?" "You can play it if you want," Veronica replied with a smile. Tom stood still, overwhelmed. "Why us?" Veronica poured wine for herself and offered Tom water. "Because you risked your life to help a stranger. In my world, that's rare. Most people only act when there's something in it for them. But you didn't even hesitate, and I don't forget things like that." Tom took a sip, trying to steady himself. "You said something about more than money." Veronica leaned forward. "I'm not here to throw cash at you and disappear. I'm offering you a path, a new life, a job, a real future for you and your daughter." He blinked. What kind of job? Let's talk over dinner, she said, rising. You deserve to hear the full story properly. As they walked toward the dining room, Tom realized something astonishing. His act of kindness hadn't just saved her life, it had changed him. The dining room looked like a set from a movie. A long walnut table stretched beneath a modern chandelier that glowed like captured stars. A private chef had prepared everything: roasted duck, truffle risotto, and even a plate of chicken tenders just for Lily. The smell alone made Tom's stomach growl. Lily was already chatting with one of the house staff, showing them her drawing from school. Tom, meanwhile, sat across from Veronica, trying to process the whirlwind he'd been caught in. You said you're offering me a job, he began. I am, she replied, folding her napkin. But not just any job, one with purpose, one that changes lives. Tom raised an eyebrow. You don't even know me. I know what you did, and that tells me more than any resume ever could. She went on to explain. Veronica had founded an outreach initiative through her company, an urban renewal program that aimed to provide second chances to people in underserved communities. They needed someone to lead local efforts, someone who understood struggle, who had lived it. You'd be the community impact coordinator for this region, she said. You'd run programs, connect families to resources, and most importantly, serve as a bridge between people like you and the corporate world. Tom was stunned. I'm not qualified. You're more qualified than half the people with degrees. What have you lived through? That's leadership. He rubbed his hands together, a nervous habit. What's the catch? No catch, she said. But there is one condition. You have to believe you deserve it. He looked at Lily, who was now playing a soft melody on the piano, completely at ease. It's a lot to take in. Veronica softened. I didn't always have wealth. I was raised in a foster home. Someone gave me a chance once. Now I get to do the same. The words hung in the air like a promise. Tom nodded slowly. Okay, I'm listening. After dinner, Tom and Veronica sat in a cozy library room lined with books and soft jazz playing low. Lily had fallen asleep on the couch, her head resting on a throw pillow that probably cost more than Tom's entire rent. I need you to understand something, Veronica began. The world I live in, it's cutthroat, greedy, sometimes inhumane. People like me, people in power, we surround ourselves with walls. I've forgotten what integrity looks like, until that night. Tom remained quiet, watching her eyes. There was a sincerity to her words, something raw and unguarded. You walked into danger for a stranger. That's the kind of leadership we can't train into people. It has to come from who you are. She pulled out a leather portfolio and slid it across the table. Tom opened it to find a contract, neatly typed, with his name at the top. Position: Regional Community Impact Coordinator. Annual salary: $85,000. Housing allowance, medical, education, coverage for dependent. Tom started, jaw slack. You want to give me all this? No, Veronica said softly. I want to invest in you. There's a difference. Tears welled in his eyes. I've never made more than $24,000 a year. Are you sure you're not making a mistake? I'm sure, she replied, but you need to decide whether you'll keep living in fear or step into something better. He closed the folder and looked at her. Do I start tomorrow? Veronica grinned. Monday morning, dress casually. As they drove home that night, Tom held Lily close. The city looked different now, less cruel, more full of promise. For the first time in years, hope didn't feel like a lie. Monday came faster than expected. Tom stood in front of his cracked bathroom mirror, adjusting the second-hand blazer Veronica had sent over with a stylist. It fit perfectly, which felt strange. He had never worn anything tailored before. Everything in his closet was thrifted, mended, or too worn to flatter. He tugged at the sleeves nervously. "Daddy, you look like a movie star," Lily said from the doorway, beaming. Tom smiled. "Are you ready to go see the city from the sky again?" She nodded eagerly, clutching her new school backpack, also a gift from Veronica, along with a tablet, school uniforms, and enrollment into a private elementary school. The same Rolls Royce awaited them downstairs, its glossy exterior somehow less intimidating now. The driver, Charles, greeted them warmly like old friends. The ride uptown was smoother this time. Tom's nerves had shifted from disbelief to quiet anxiety. What if he messed up? What if he didn't belong in this world? They arrived at Veronica's penthouse just before sunset. The city skyline shimmered in gold and lavender light. Tom held Lily's hand as they entered the same opulent lobby, then rode the elevator to the top. The dining room was set again, but this time less formal, cozy lighting, soft jazz, the smell of baked rosemary chicken and roasted vegetables. Veronica greeted them in jeans and a silk blouse, barefoot. "No suits tonight," she said, ushering them in. "This is family style. Sit wherever you like." They sat, and for the first few minutes the conversation stayed light. How Lily liked her new school, Tom's first impressions of the outreach team he'd met briefly that morning, and Veronica's humorous story about nearly burning toast with a $10,000 oven. Then, as dessert, a berry tart with cream was served. Veronica leaned in, her tone shifting. "I invited you here tonight not just to celebrate, but to be transparent," she began. "Tom, the truth is I've been followed before. I've been targeted, but I've also had bodyguards, trackers, and protocols. The night you found me, all of that failed." Tom's brow furrowed. "I had just left an off-grid meeting. I told no one where I was going. Someone from the inside tipped them off. I don't know who yet, but they meant to make me disappear, temporarily or forever." She paused, meeting his eyes. "You stopped that, without even knowing who I was." Tom swallowed hard. "Anyone would have—" "No," she interrupted gently. "They wouldn't." She looked at Lily, who was now quietly playing on the tablet nearby. "You changed the outcome of more than just my night. You've altered what I thought was possible, about trust, about people, about second chances." Tom listened, uncertain where it was going. "I want more dinners like this," Veronica said. "More nights where we talk about real things and lift each other up. And I want you to know, this isn't charity. This is collaboration." For the first time, Tom allowed himself to breathe. The woman who owed him nothing had given him everything, and more than that, she'd invited him to believe in his own worth again. Tuesday morning, Tom arrived at the downtown office building housing Thorne Technologies' Social Impact Division. It was sleek but welcoming, with art from local communities on the walls and a play corner for employees' children. The receptionist greeted him with a warm smile. "Welcome to your first day, Mr. Carter." His office, was modest but bright, with a desk, shelves, and a view overlooking a nearby park. It even had a small picture frame already on the desk, with a note inside that read, "For your first photo of Lily here." Veronica's assistant, James, met him shortly after. "You'll start by shadowing some of our coordinators, then we'll dive into program design," James explained. "Think about food banks, housing partnerships, education pipelines. We want you to help shape the future of this outreach branch." Tom nodded, absorbing every word. His first meeting was with a team developing a job training program for former inmates. Tom spoke up, hesitantly at first, but his ideas struck a chord. He talked about dignity, opportunity, and the real emotional barriers to rebuilding your life after failure. The others listened. By noon, he was already penciled into the next 3 strategic sessions. James even pulled him aside and whispered, "You've got instincts we can't teach." When the day ended, Tom picked up Lily and walked home with a spring in his step he hadn't felt in years. It was more than a job. It was the first time in a long time he'd felt needed for something more than survival. As the weeks passed, Tom immersed himself in the new world. He learned fast. He asked questions. He listened. And yet doubt followed him like a shadow. Each time he sat in a conference room with professionals wearing polished suits and using jargon-laced terms, he felt the echo of imposter syndrome. What was a former janitor doing in a space like this? It didn't help that some colleagues, particularly a senior liaison named Brent, made subtle jabs. "Interesting take, Tom," Brent said one afternoon during a planning meeting. "I guess real-world experience can count for something." Tom gritted his teeth. It wasn't the first time Brent had downplayed his contributions. At home, the weight returned, the fear that this was all temporary, that the moment someone more qualified came along, he'd be let go. One Friday evening, he nearly backed out of a keynote he'd been invited to deliver for a local housing initiative launch. He stared at the draft notes all night, pacing, second-guessing himself. But Veronica called unexpectedly. "Brent said something again, didn't he?" she asked. Tom hesitated. "Yeah." "Forget Brent. He's never been in your shoes. You're not here because I felt sorry for you. You're here because I see what others don't yet." "You really believe that?" "I believe in you, Tom. You need to start doing the same." That night, he gave the speech. Nervous at first, but as he spoke from the heart about dignity, community, and what it means to be seen, the crowd stood to their feet in applause. And something shifted in him. Not only did he belong, he had a voice, and people were finally listening. Moving day felt like waking up inside someone else's life. Tom stood in front of the townhouse with Lily by his side, both of them staring up at the crisp white trim and the tidy garden lining the walkway. The neighborhood was clean, quiet, and safe, so unlike the one they'd left behind. No rusted fences, no graffiti, just picket fences, flower boxes, and neighbors who waved. The house had 2 stories, 3 bedrooms, and windows that didn't rattle in the wind. Inside, it was already furnished, courtesy of Veronica's team, with everything chosen based on Lily's favorite colors and Tom's understated style. The fridge was stocked, the lights turned on without flickering. The bathroom had a tub that Lily declared big enough to swim in. For the first time in years, Tom didn't feel like he was renting someone else's space. He felt like he had arrived. He walked through each room in awe. The home office with a desk of his own, the cozy kitchen with polished counters, and Lily's room where a canopy bed and shelves filled with books waited. She squealed when she saw the reading nook under the window. "Do I get to keep all of this?" she asked, eyes wide. Tom knelt beside her, his voice soft. "Yeah, baby. This is home now." The move was more than physical. At work, Tom continued growing into his role. He built connections with local shelters, launched weekend youth programs, and organized food drives. His calendar filled up quickly, not with just meetings, but with impact. The faces he used to see in line at soup kitchens now saw him as an advocate. One afternoon, a mother hugged him at a housing fair. "You gave my son a job. You gave me hope," she whispered. Tom choked back tears. Evenings were sacred. He cooked dinner with Lily, helped with homework, and played board games. Laughter returned to their home, echoing off the walls like music. Still, the ghosts of poverty didn't vanish overnight. Tom often double-checked bank balances and woke from nightmares where it had all been a dream. But with each passing week, that fear faded, not because life was perfect, but because finally it was stable. He often thought of the alley, that single decision to act. It hadn't just changed his trajectory, it had opened a door to a world he never knew existed. And this new home wasn't just a place, it was a declaration. They had made it. With stability came reflection and purpose. Tom couldn't forget where he came from, and he knew that for every one of him who got a chance, there were hundreds still stuck, waiting for a break that might never come. So he got to work. He proposed a new initiative to Veronica's board, Project Second Light, a mentorship and training program for single parents in low-income communities. His pitch was passionate, personal, and filled with real-life testimonials from the people he now worked with daily. The board approved it unanimously. The project launched with five families, then 10. Within months, it was statewide. Tom trained new coordinators, created toolkits, and even returned to his old neighborhood to hold community sessions. People who had watched him sweep floors now listened to him speak on financial literacy, job readiness, and emotional resilience. Every step he included Lily, bringing her to charity drives, teaching her about empathy and gratitude. She'd become his shadow, and he hers. One afternoon, a young man approached him after a session. "I was going to rob someone last week," he said quietly, "but then I read about you, thought maybe there's another way." Tom nodded, fighting emotion. "There is. I'll help you find it." He never turned anyone away. Veronica continued to support him, but always gave him the autonomy to lead. They grew close, not romantically, but like kindred spirits. She called him her mirror. "You remind me who I used to be," she said once, "and who I still can be." One day, during a strategy retreat, Veronica pulled Tom aside. "We're expanding internationally. I want you to head up our Global Impact Division," she said. "You're more than local now." Tom smiled. "Let's keep building." But he never forgot to look back. For every hand that reached forward, he extended his own. Because the real win wasn't escaping hardship, it was helping others escape it too. Exactly 1 year after the alley incident, Tom stood on a stage in front of a sea of people. It was the annual gala for Thorn Foundation's Global Impact Network. The room glowed with chandeliers, gowns, tuxedos, and the hum of wealth. But tonight's spotlight wasn't on opulence, it was on Tom. Veronica introduced him with a heartfelt tribute, her voice catching slightly. He didn't just save a life, he started a ripple, and that ripple has turned into a wave. The applause that followed shook the room. Tom stepped up to the podium in a tailored suit, a far cry from the torn jacket he wore the night of the rescue. He looked out at the crowd and saw Lily in the front row, dressed in a little blue dress, grinning with pride. He took a deep breath. "I used to think being poor meant being invisible," he began. "People looked past me. I was just a janitor, a single dad. But one night, I made a choice to step into a moment, not knowing it would change everything." He paused, the room hanging on every word. But it wasn't luck. It was courage. And courage lives in all of us, especially those who struggle the most. He spoke of second chances, of dignity, of giving before receiving, of how a Rolls Royce didn't change his life, a decision did. He closed with this: "You don't need a title to be a hero. You just need to act when the world says you shouldn't." The standing ovation was thunderous. Later that evening, as the music played and donors mingled, Veronica approached him quietly. "You've outgrown your origin story," she said with a wink. "Time to start writing a new one." Tom looked around. The friends he'd made, the lives he'd touched, the daughter he'd raised with love and integrity. "I already have," he replied. And with that, the struggling dad who once had nothing, had everything.